Hey gamers, welcome to another episode of Bonus XP. Today it's me and Zach, and we are chatting about Earthbound, or Mother 2 if you're nasty. Zach.
Hi, welcome.
How's it going? Welcome to your very
Good.
first episode. You excited?
Know. Yeah, I'm very excited. I feel very vulnerable right now. I feel very vulnerable. But this is gonna be fun. This is a great game from both of our childhoods, and
Yeah.
a lot to talk about. So very excited.
And it's cool that we're doing this now because Earthbound turns 30 this year.
Isn't that crazy? I also
Yeah.
turned 30 this year. You know, it's so weird.
Sure. Okay. Keep telling
Uh-huh.
lies.
30 years ago. 30 years ago. It's crazy. I just saw a thought that was like 2024 and 1990 are the same years like gap as 1956 and like 1990. So like the 90s is the 50s. Anyways, it's crazy. We're old. This game's old, but it's great.
Brain math. Yeah.
Weren't you
Okay.
a math major?
I was a
Yeah.
math major, but I wasn't a time major, Zachary.
Time Lord.
Says, speaking of time, I'm
Yes.
curious, how many times have you played this game?
Oh God. Okay, so my friend had it. I never actually owned a copy of it. That's the thing, and I don't think you did either, right? I feel like you told me you borrowed.
Yeah,
this from a
no,
friend as well.
I would borrow this from
Yes, same.
people like cousins or friends in school.
Yes. So I remember playing this the first time with my friend. We would kind of like strategize together back in the '90s when we were young, and we
Hey,
beat it
some
one
of us
summer.
are still young. Look at this beautiful skin.
Sure.
Look at
Sure.
Take it all in.
I'm so glad your camera's just a little blurry. And so we beat it then, and that was like a huge monumental achievement. And then I think I played it probably 2 or 3, probably 3 times since. I think I've bought it on every single virtual console that Nintendo ever offered it on.
Oh,
through,
really?
like, the Wii or the Wii U. Like I think I bought the like $6 version of it. Now they don't have it obviously on Switch, which is kind of annoying, but unless you do. Well, I take that back. They do have it on Switch. You can play it.
Yeah, it's on Switch. You can't buy it. It's on.
You can't buy it. It's on the virtual console in there that you pay for. Yeah. But how many times do you think you've played this?
I've definitely played it 10 times.
Okay.
It's up there. Like it's not as high as Final Fantasy 6 or 4 or 5. Like those are well in the teens, possibly in the 20 for Final Fantasy 6. Don't judge me. That's
No judgment.
Like, but judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there was a very big connection with me in this game about kind of like this boy on this journey and kind of like being apart from your family and having to take care of yourself, just especially for me because my parents were never around as a kid.
Yeah.
So I had that a lot, and I feel like getting kind of wrapped into what was going on in the game, I felt that huge connect, and I feel like even more so than other games I know we've talked about in other episodes where sometimes you lean into the themes of a game.
Yeah.
But I think because this game is just so rooted in like our actual society, our modern world, that it's easy to connect it and feel like what's going on. In fact,
Yes.
even in our Discord channel, we were talking about someone didn't know that it's basically a like alternate universe, like world. It's not even just America. Like
Yeah.
the first four cities you go in are definitely like the U.S., North America, and then you
Yes.
travel on to the other parts of the world, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy how much like Western influence this game has. And I remember reading something way back in the day that the creators of it were very fascinated by like Western culture and all that. So yeah, like the city of like Forsyth or Onett, like there's heavy Western influence there. And then as you start to progress through, there's more Eastern influence, which I think is cool. Obviously when you get to like Pooh's, village and stuff, that's really cool. And there's a lot more Eastern influence there, but
Very much. I mean, very
yeah.
literal there too. Like
Yes.
Very. What is it? It's where Mount Everest is. I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, sure.
Nepal, it's very Nepal. Like that area is very, very
Nepal, yes.
Yeah,
the
very
mountains, all that stuff.
I mean, fuck. One of the places is literally called Tucson. Like
Isn't that
a direct rip of a U.S. city, which is fine. Like
Yes.
that's very clever. Also, are you an Onet or are you a Onet? Someone once
Oh
said to me
God.
one-net because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and like that made me challenge how are we supposed to say this? Like, is it onet? Because I grew up saying onet, and now I'm like, I don't know.
It might be
Like
one net. That would make
one
sense.
net, yeah.
And then
Because
four
it's
side.
three and like four side, like very clear, and Tucson.
Oh
So
my God.
I feel like that's no judgment on either side to anyone.
No.
You guys can kind of talk about that in the comments if you want to.
Yes.
If it's a one-net or an o-net, like
I think it's also one of those things too, like when you're a kid, you read it once and then you're like, it's this. And then that's how it's stuck. Like if I would have played this game maybe when I was a little bit older, even though I still don't recognize the pattern, like maybe I would have been like, oh, it's 1 because 2 and 3. But yeah, I'm an onet person. Though
see, some of us are mature enough to get past our preconceived biases and actually like grow up and evolve, but it's okay. I mean,
that's so weird. Who do you know? Who do you know that does that? That's so weird. You're not talking about yourself, obviously.
Not with this skin.
Baby. But Tucson isn't odd. Like obviously it's 2 now, but like back in the day I was like, wow, that's a really odd choice. Like just like a weird like kind of suburb of Arizona or something. Like what is the choice?
Very random. But maybe
sense.
the localizer was smart enough to like to make that pun. Like,
do you think it was a localizer, or do you think it was intended by the original like writers to call it that though?
I mean, that is really tough because I don't know. I don't have the answer. But to me, thinking about what was happening in other games at the time, like I don't know if Ozzy Slash and Flea are named that in
They're not.
the Japanese version, right? So that's very like a Western call. So I feel like that had to be on the localizer.
I thought Flea had like a really weird name in Chrono Trigger in the PAL and other versions. It's mayonnaise, like mayonnaise.
That's right.
Yes.
Because they're all named after condiments, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which they kind of can continue in Chrono Cross as well with salt, pepper, and ketchup.
Listen, I've never played that game. Don't spoil it for me. How dare you? If you're not watching the video,
you're fine.
Patrick's
it's not that.
mouth is wide open.
When we do a Chrono Trigger
uncommon.
episode, which we will be... we'll be talking. We'll talk about it a little bit.
Yes,
I'll make fun of you then.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyways, but I think it's a good segue. All that to say, the naming and the words and all that is a good segue to talk about the writing, because I think the writing for both an RPG and a Super Nintendo game, I think, is outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's odd, it's quirky, it's weird, it accompanies the game perfectly, it makes you care. To me, like, the writing is at the core of the heart of the game too, outside of just what it looks like and the music and all that. It's so well done that it just feels like it's on a different level.
I feel like it has a very reverse structure too, where a lot of games really want you to care about the main characters, where this is a game that really wants you to care about who else you're seeing along the journey, because none of the characters have a personality aside, and like everything that would give someone a personality is related to the people who are connected to them. Like Ness, you get the impression that he's struggling with his adventure based on his mom and how, like, having to call your mom and recover from homesickness. But truly, it's not the main party, because they have no personality. It's all of these little people like Apple Kid, Orange Kid, your sister, Dr. Is Ann Donuts? Is that right?
I think so. I think that's right. And then like Pokey
and yeah. So I find that very interesting, because and like it's weird to think of how that works, where you have a no personality cast, but then you have so much personality in the game. And it's one of those games where whenever someone's playing it for the first time, I tell them, like, talk to everyone, because there's so much humor, and like some of it is just obscenely silly, right? Like, it's really not that inspiring, but I mean, like, it's still kind of hilarious, and some of it still lasts really well. Like, you don't see that kind of like cute kitschy humor in gaming anymore, or it's not done well. So I enjoyed that.
I think that's well said. It's so funny, because I feel like the choice to do that and to make the main character Ness so important though he never speaks again, much like, like a Link in Zelda. He has the most personality because of the kind of like the context in which he is in, so like his parents and all of that. And then you have like, Paula and Jeff and Pooh, and they all have their own like little stories, but it's I feel like it's a lot easier to put yourself into the place of Ness as the main player, which I think was the choice. I think the choice was, hey, this, put yourself into this main character versus like, developing these relationships with these side characters and everything. So
yeah,
a very
like,
interesting
right.
singular choice I feel like was a very conscious choice that the developers and writers and all of them like made, which I think is interesting.
It means a lot more when you have these like blank slate characters where like a lot of people have parents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most people have decent relationships with their parents, so to have like those loving parents who are taking care of you from afar, or like if we're focusing on this is like a Western culture game, a lot of people own dogs, and having that dog that you have that little so cute.
Yes. So cute.
I think you're absolutely right. I think one thing I want to talk about too is your thoughts on the risk of doing this modern game with modern real life things that substitute for what we would know in most RPGs of like food for potions, like miscellaneous items for weapons.
Yes.
Why do you think that was a choice? Like, how do you think that stacks up to even games that you're playing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I played a lot of Stardew Valley. I think it's obviously closer to that, which is kind of like this realistic fantasy. It's got obviously a ton of fantasy mechanics in it, Starman and Gigas and just basically everything once you start the game. And to have things like a baseball bat be your weapon, or bottle rockets, or teddy bears, or, whatever, a hamburger, recover HP. Like, I think it makes it slightly more accessible to me, and again, kind of reiterating this point of it helps you put yourself into the game because you are familiar with these things. Now, I have no idea if I eat a hamburger or you eat a hot dog how much HP will actually recover in real life.
I mean, for me though, we be guzzling those hot dogs.
yeah, guzzling glizzies, 10% max health every time. But I do think it's an interesting choice too. Again, that it makes it feel more real, and it also ties back to just all the different mechanics. So like you said, like calling your mom or your dad, putting money in your bank account, like all that stuff is very real.
The facts of a bank account, right?
Yeah, like, it's all very familiar. So I think they've created this really cool world where everything feels familiar, and then have added on top of that, which I feel like just sets you off at the beginning when you wake up in your pajamas and you have to go check out what's going outside. Like, it just sets it up to just like be that like inviting already.
Oh yeah, it's like, to use a taboo word, it's kind of like the RPG Harry Potter, pre-Harry Potter, where you're this kid and you get to go on this fantastical adventure in a very normal looking world, and then you kind of get to see how not normal it is. And like that, I mean, I love shit like that. Like, would totally read comics that are like that, where it's kind of like your universe adjacent. I think that's why things like Scott Pilgrim work so well, because you see huge parallels to like what's going on in your world, but like here's the fantasy twist that just makes it so delightful and fun. What were some of the things that like stuck out for you that were some of your favorites of like that parallelism?
I mean, I love the teddy bear mechanic. I remember going to the large shopping mall in Tucson and going up all the elevators.
Or just shopping at shopping malls.
Yeah,
it's just
insane. And being like, oh, I can get this yo-yo now, or ooh, I need to get up big bottle rockets, or whatever. Like that like weird like capitalism, like just buying things is such an interesting, again, like Western culture kind of viewpoint, which I think is interesting how they did it. So I really like that. I thought the food was great too. One of my favorite things to do was always wrestle around in a trash can.
Oh,
and
yeah,
where you just like
random things,
yeah, like, oh, we found a hamburger, and you're like, oh, you about to eat that hamburger out of that trash can? Okay, cool.
We a freaking vegan.
Yeah, freaking vegan for sure, for sure. And then also like, what if Pooh doesn't like hamburgers? What if Jeff is gluten free? Like,
that's actually one of my favorite things that you're mentioning right there, because Pooh does not eat
right.
Western food, and like he
Right.
doesn't get the same benefit that the other kids from. I would love to see in a future game where you take like these ideals of like favorite foods or things that you
Yes.
don't eat, and it changes how much you heal. Like,
Yes.
I love that so much. So could you imagine
Yeah.
if Stardew Valley at the very beginning, like it made you choose like your general palate, and then like you can't just
Yes.
like I don't drink coffee. So what if like coffee like made you lose stamina? Like I
Yeah.
just think that's so
Increases
clever.
anxiety level, lowers
Yeah.
appetite, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I think kind of status effecty. That was one of the things that stood out for me.
Like homesickness.
Homesickness. You get the sniffles.
Yeah.
Fear.
Fear.
What is it? Not heat rash.
Oh, heat stroke.
Heat stroke. Like
Yeah.
I think those are so much more fun, even if they are just palette swaps of like the status effects that we know.
Yes.
Because it's not like this random mystical monster is like doing something that like, okay, I've seen this a million times. It's like a more modern take on some of these things. Like everybody gets a cold, so
Yeah,
what if
and-
these like kids get a cold?
And to that point, like, I know what a cold feels like. I don't know what like stone feels like. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
stone
you
says,
you know what stone feels
"Oh,
like.
extra stony. But like again, like homesickness. Like we've all felt that. We know what that feeling is. We know how like hard that can be to deal with it. That kind of thing. So like when your character is experiencing it, again, it feels familiar. It goes, oh, that's actually a little serious. Like that feels pretty serious. Like I might be more inclined to take care of it now because I know what homesick feels like versus like, oh, I have, I'm paralyzed because something hit me with electricity. Like it ties you in more. So that's why I think this game all along the way just pulls you in closer and closer to make it feel like you're being affected by all of this stuff and you have some skin in the game. So that's why I think like those choices are just so genius and so well done, because that could have easily gone horribly, right? It could have easily been just like gimmicky, like, oh yeah, we get it, like sniffles, but it's just how well it's thought through and executed, and even the accompanying like sound effects, that kind of thing, like the do 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 do, like those like little sound effects when you either like recover something or
okay, now it's what you're talking about.
Like
when you get sick or when you get haunted, and it has like the little even effect.
Like those sounds.
When you die.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, speaking of that, the hit point reel.
Yes,
Clever. Like I love that idea of, okay, like you're like thinking of it, you're bleeding out, like legitimately you're bleeding out. What are you gonna do to stop it?
Right.
Really puts that pressure on. I think if this game had more like an active system than a round system, that might have been even more intense, because you would be like, oh, I got time. Like I can let myself, especially Ness with like the million hit points that he has, I can let this reel for a little bit and kind of add the pressure, versus someone like Paula or Jeff where their hit point pool is these big.
Yeah.
But I loved it.
Paula's
Like I think it was a
dedicated
really
healer.
good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you say Paula's dedicated healer?
Yeah. Right.
No, she can't heal. Ness is the healer. Fake fan. Get him.
Oh God! Don't drag me! Don't slay me!
No, Ness
Why did I think...
and Pooh are the only two people who can heal.
Oh, I knew Pooh can. Yeah, okay. For some reason, okay. Maybe it was status effects? I don't remember. Or maybe I'm just thinking about her prey ability.
She's damage. She's damage queen.
She's damage queen. Yeah. Well, disregard all of that. Disregard all of that.
I'm not cutting that.
All of it. It's fine. It's fine. You're here to make me look stupid at the gig.
Then I don't even have to try.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, let's move on to something less embarrassing. Let's talk about the music.
Let's talk about the music. This is where those parts where I'm kind of split. There are some tracks that are bops, and I absolutely love them. But then I think there are some that fall a little flat for me, and I don't know if it's one of the Alien tracks, and it's one of just like the regular monster tracks where it's just kind of like
it's not doing it for you.
Yeah, it's not doing it for me. Like just a little too obscure. But then you have the ones where you're fighting against like the little floppy guys, and it has like the drum beat at the beginning, and then it's just like and you have all the very psychedelic backgrounds going on and whatnot. It's so fun. What about you? What were some of like the at least battle tracks? You can talk about anything, but
yeah, I mean battle tracks were great. I mean when I liked when you fought like the ants. the Mad Ants or whatever. Those are fun.
I don't think I like that track at all. I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
I thought because it's in that like kind of like first-ish area, right? Like when you're in the caves and stuff, which I thought was fun. I mean, I love any of the like weird like science fiction-y like beep boops kind of sounds you have like when you're in like at the end when you turn into the robots. Yeah, Starman's track. I mean, come on.
Those are some of the really good, but like the really like. How would you even describe that? Like alien funk? Like
yeah, that's probably actually a really good descriptor
I don't really know how to say it.
It is funky. It's got like a little bit of just like a sci-fi vibe. Like it's not theremin, but it's like
it's a little techno, but not quite techno.
Yes, exactly. But then you contrast it with like some of the sounds of like Onette. If you've ever heard of that town, that has like
be one of my favorite songs in any game of all time.
Yeah, so good. Even so good that it made its way to Super Smash Brothers, right? Inside of the level. Yeah, and it feels like way more welcoming. I don't know, like music can be such a hit or miss. I'm currently
that
playing
wasn't that song.
What?
That wasn't that song. Oh, I just fucked up. No.
Oh,
no!
Get her, chat.
Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It's that one. That one. That's the one. Yeah.
Little flat, but you know it's fine. We'll auto tune it in post. But like I'm playing Bloodborne right now, right? So like Bloodborne's OST.
I mean, they're the same game. It's basically
amazing, right? Like, but it's all like it's all very of the same ilk, right? Like it's all, you know, that choir, that choral, the like intense kind of chanting, the loud like sweeps of music and stuff, and it's great. But and then you go out into the world and there's no music. Like, but I feel like contrasting that against something like an Earthbound, like Earthbound has way more like variety. And I know they're very different games. It's hard to compare them, but I'm just trying to pull something from reference that I'm currently going through.
Yeah,
and it's just like it pulls you in a different way. Mainly because you're not just only battling bosses, but I feel like it sets the world off in a really nice, beautiful, like kind of place.
Yeah, it's very peaks and valleys in like the delivery, and it's very relevant to the area that you're in. Like you're saying, to use Bloodborne as an example, there are some places that you go to in that game where like if you threw a track at me, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that's the blank song, as in,
right.
Like if it's the area. But if you're like, oh, here's this track, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a desert song.
Right,
like,
exactly.
It totally fits the context of where you
theme.
are.
Yes.
Like, and for me, like thinking of that, I think Earthbound truly captures that delivery of what you're saying of where you are. Like the full setting is there, and that includes the sounds. Like when you're in Threed, you hear that spooky ass music.
Yes.
And like you know that you are in a zombie land, which I think is incredible. Or like there's something about the safety of being home with your mom and listening to that home track that like you don't hear that track anywhere else in that game. Right. It is just at home. Like you are safe here, and I love that. So I get completely what you're saying. Like I'm a big video game music person too, and even though not all of the songs land for me, I do think they add so much to the setting. Nothing pisses me off more. Which I know this happens in Earthbound, but at least they have so many different tracks. But when you hear the same dungeon song,
oh, absolutely,
in every dungeon you go to, and it's very irksome. Like it's lazy design, and I think that a game like this, where you know they didn't push the bill on everything, there's no real puzzles in any of the dungeons or anything like that. So to go in these places, to have these songs that kind of like match what you're doing is great.
Yeah, and I feel like the battle tracks inside Earthbound were pretty varied too. Like I even think of like Final Fantasy VII, right? Iconic battle track.
But it's the same goddamn track.
But it's the same track. Yeah. Yes. Now, also related to that though is the victory music. Like when you level up in Earthbound, which is one of my like favorite things, and I think it's just because it's a very like real memory for me. There was like this huge sense of relief because you're like, oh my god, and then it like took you through like Paula's, you know, HP increased by 7. Paul, you know, Jeff's luck increased by 8. Like it read it to you. It to you, which was just so different than nowadays, where it's like level up plus all these stats. You know, it's very quick. Like they kind of make you savor it a little bit, which I think is really fun. While that music plays in the background, that kind of almost like you made it starry, kind of twinkly like music, which I think is great. So I don't know, it makes you feel like a real sense of accomplishment sometimes when you do it and you're like, oh my god, I'm not gonna die so easily anymore.
Right. Yeah, there's it's weird. Even something like you're saying, like leveling up, we are completely capturing that essence.
Yes.
Like you don't. I don't. What other game has level up track? Right?
Oh God, I'm
I
sure.
don't.
There's something, but
I can't think of any games that maybe. Oh, Super Mario RPG. Super Mario
Oh,
RPG might be
sure.
one of the only games that I can think of that has like its own. Well, no, does it though? No, it just extends the regular track. It's not even special.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to think too. Like I don't. I mean, you
Well,
have
anyways.
like post-game battle music when you level up and things like Final Fantasy VII, but it's not like level up music. You know, it's just it the music that plays regardless of after the battle.
And it's weird. It's weird thinking of games that you enjoy, where you go back and you're like, "I love this game," and a lot of them, hearing the same battle track for the thousandth game, or thousandth time, you're like,
Yeah.
this is too much. And having to create content and whatnot and play a bunch of older games and whatnot. Like, I love some of these games, but I feel like I'm driving Scott up a wall because he's hearing the same battle track for the millionth time.
Who cares?
But it makes you appreciate things. Like, there's a series that I love called Etrian Odyssey.
Sure.
And the first two dungeons you go to have the same battle track, but then you go to like the third and fourth, and the game knows, and they switch it up. You don't have the same regular battle music anymore. So at least for half the game, it decides to switch it up. And those little things that you don't think to appreciate when you're playing, Earthbound was doing them. Earthbound was doing them.
And in the world of RPGs where grinding can be a very real thing that you might have to do, or battling just going through a lot of enemies inside of one area, even just to have different enemy music based on the enemy inside of the same area it's nice. It keeps you going. It's not like, okay, yep, and then I'm gonna just mash attack, let's get through it, come on. Like, just the kind of repetition and monotony of that RPGs can sometimes encounter because you're trying to get to that next like plateau inside the game of like leveling system and stuff, so you can take on that next boss. Like, it never felt like that to me. It never felt like stale to me, even when I was trying to like level up towards the end of the game when we were robots. I remember like farming enemies a lot then, but it just never got stale,
One thought that I kind of want to leave us with, and obviously this isn't something that we can have a definitive answer on. So I did a video, is Earthbound worth playing today? And
on OnlyFans.
Yep. On OnlyFans, you can subscribe there. My tape was showing the entire time. Yeah. Earthbound's actually what I call my hole. So, yeah.
You don't call it Mother too?
I don't call anything Mother.
Mother has arrived.
It's okay, except for that Mother. But so I did that, and just thinking about games like these, and we don't see them as much anymore. And the only I can think of one very unsuccessful game and one very relatively successful game in this whole like Earthbound-ish scope, where it's in a modern style. So there was a game called Y2K. It was an indie game. It was really bad. It flopped.
Never heard of it.
And then you have Yakuza Like a Dragon,
sure, which
doesn't have like the hugely sci-fi-ness that Earthbound does, but like modern game, real society, like you're using a bunch of going to different modern locations, actual locations in Japan, and doing a bunch of things. Why do you think that we still aren't seeing games like this? Like, do you think it's because Earthbound just like owns that, like nothing else will ever be as good as that, or do you think that there are other reasons?
For me, the differentiation there is like first party versus third party developed games. Like, this was very much a Nintendo game. It was also by the people who made Pokemon, right? Game Freak. Didn't Game Freak have something to do with that, or is that? Am I wrong? I know HAL did. HAL Laboratories did something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Anyways, we'll find out. Don't.
Well, but also like that's super early too. Like that was a new IP. It's got that like fresh stank on it of a new game,
right? But
when it came out,
you think about it, like I feel like indie games weren't really a thing back then, right? Either like because you didn't have access to get them as easily, or there's just cost too much money to make a cart, that kind of thing, and then distribution. So like now I feel like that kind of spirit that kind of off-kilter chance is more reserved for smaller game studios and more indie developed titles. Like I've never played Undertale. But I
you
know
haven't? You need to.
Right. But does it have a little bit of the spirit of Earthbound though? Like just in terms of like maybe not.
So, okay, Undertale is
just
an incredible
quirky
game.
Yeah.
I think when people say the spirit of, I think it's just an aesthetic alone.
Okay.
And quirk factor. I like nothing,
and the quirk factor is what I'm kind of
right.
talking about.
Like they are super successful games in their own right, but I don't always get the Undertale is new Earthbound, because there's so much more that Earthbound did that Undertale doesn't do, but there's so much that Undertale does that Earthbound could never, so I just think quirk and slight aesthetic, having those like Super Nintendo graphics alone are the two places they overlap, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and I guess more to just the point of, I feel like I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's risky. It's risky to come up with a system that's very related to modern day, because it's not new on paper. If I'm trying to pitch this to a developer or publisher, saying, hey, yeah, and then you're going to use baseball bats. It's like, well, where's my giant sword? Where's my gun that shoots 16 bullets at once? That kind of thing. So
right.
That
like what are we cutting from society in order to make it fit as a game?
Right.
And
also,
you just made me. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just push. And also, like, that kind of fascination with the West from the East and putting it to a game, I feel like that ship has kind of sailed now, because everything's so homogenized, and because of the era of the internet, and I can look up everything and all that. So I feel like that the time for Earthbound type games have passed, but I do think there's still the spirit of that quirk and trying something new, but still with that familiarity inside of like in the indie world.
Sure.
I don't see it in large first or second party developers, I guess.
No, definitely not.
Which is, sad, but also I get it. You're trying to make money. You're trying to sell games. Give me the AAA, whatever. So it's kind of a special place. Maybe that will never happen again.
I was kind of thinking, and I can't believe I didn't think of this game, because you and I were just talking about them while we were gaming the other night, but the South Park games,
sure,
like do completely do this too. And I mean, like, they're very subset niche, because it's a TV show, so of course we're gonna continue like what you see there, but they do it very successfully too. But I think that, like, answering my own question, they have their own advantage, because they have this established world, even in the first one, it's hilarious. You travel to Canada and it goes from like a standard game to everything is 8-bit. like Canada is just like very backwards country.
Can you confirm that for us? Can you confirm that Canada is all 8-bit?
What if my mouth just I wish I could edit it where my mouth just started doing the
kick the baby.
But I think it almost feels like things aren't as Western focused, but I do wish, like, if I had to make a game right now, I think I would want to do something in that style of, the kid's adventure, and there are a lot of that parallelism of like what we see in our society, but what are those fun little twists to make it exciting? I feel like you're right. If you Google Earthbound like games, there are 100 games in development. They're and like. They're never, like, these games, I don't know if they're ever going to come out. Like, I've been following, someone's apparently making Mother 4. First of all, like, you're going to need to change the name of that game. Second of all, like,
cease and desist.
Where is it? Because I would love to see it. But you're right. I think it's a risk. Like, it's a big risk to do something, because you're always going to have it compared to Earthbound. And even though Earthbound like can be hard to go back and play sometimes, just because it's older,
pacing and
it's dated, and like there are a lot of things like newer games that are a lot more intuitive depending on how you play, what you play, but like it still did it really well at its time. It's one of those iconic pieces. I don't think it's in the holy trinity of RPGs on the Super Nintendo. But
interesting.
It's but it's like number 4 clearly. Like for me, it's Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, and then like a very close 4th is Earthbound for sure.
Got it. I'd swap RPG for Earthbound, and Earthbound would be my number 1. But
did you play Earthbound? Or sorry, do you play Super Mario RPG?
Yes, girl. Gino for life, baby. Yes, I absolutely did.
That's fair. We always are open to other people's opinions. It does not matter how wrong they are. But
would you say, just off topic, or not off topic, offhand, just because I don't even know figures or popularity or whatever, which would you say was more popular worldwide? Or
Super Mario RPG, because
just because it's got the Mario.
Earthbound didn't sell. Earthbound in the West. I don't know how else.
Cult classic.
Japan, but like the reason why you go to a game store and you see a $1,500 full in-box Earthbound game is because they did not sell many in the US. Like my friend who lent me his game, I wish like I had never given it back as kids, which I don't think he would have cared or noticed, but like because he had everything, like he had that player's guide, it was a giant box.
We need to talk about that. We need to talk about the player's guide, because you and I both had it.
Loved it.
And
loved it.
You know how they say olfactory senses are like the closest tied to memory, like they're like they can make you like memory like remember things so easily.
Oh yeah.
Those scratch and sniff stickers.
I can still
the bubble gum, the bananas,
I still know
trash.
exactly what the paper of the player's guide felt like. I'm a big like sensory person too. Like I think I still remember what Master Belch, like they didn't have like the fart smell or something like that.
Yes, it was like trash smell.
I still know exactly. Yeah, it's great, just a great overall package. But I mean, it didn't. That's one of the reasons why for me, Super Mario RPG had a lot more success, which is Mario, So
of course, I should have just guessed that.
On there, and a lot of people knew who Mario was, and I think more people would. I don't know if more people would know who Geno is versus Ness, but I mean, like obviously Super Mario RPG, and to have the developers of Earthbound sit on this game and not ever want to continue it, which hopefully will have some big upset going full circle back to the 30 years. Hopefully they'll be like, guess what, bitches? It's here. Whether that's like a full, true, like how HD 2D, like how epic would that be? Or just
Star Ocean style.
I would not care. Give me either one. Like, because they're doing it for Dragon Quest 3. Dragon Quest 3 is getting a full pixel remaster. You could just slap that on Earthbound, and I think people would still be happy. But regardless, it'd be cool to see something, because they're wasting it.
And I think there's such a community too built in with Earthbound, just because it is kind of that cult status, which is great. I mean, I feel like that's kind of why Nintendo probably brought Ness and Lucas eventually to Super Smash Brothers.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I mean, Ness was in Smash 64, like the original.
Yeah, he was the secret character. Or
what a wild choice to like make for a
made
new
me
IP
more excited.
At
Nothing
that
made
level
me more
too.
Excited.
Yeah, it's great.
Me and that kid who had the game were the only two people who knew who Ness was. Like no one else knew, and like that was when it was fun to be that kind of gamer, where you would see a game like this where you're like splicing in a bunch of different IPs, and most people would be like, who the fuck is that? Like
Mr. Game & Watch, who?
Right, but nobody knew. Nobody knew who Ness was.
I feel like that's now how I feel about a Smash. I'm like, there must be a Fire Emblem character. I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, if they have a sword, they're probably a Fire Emblem character.
Yeah. But the one thing so like as we're talking about like what does this IP hold? What do we want from it? One of the interesting things that came up in my mind is I was thinking like what a remake or a 2.5 D version or whatever it look like is. How would they address the characters and the characters like personalities and like humanity, I guess to say, because I feel like when they added PK Fire, when they added his voice and Lucas's voice, it changed how I felt about Ness.
Because it made them more kids as opposed to this ambiguous age of like maybe they're teens, maybe they're not, like we don't really know.
And also just like I feel like and some of it is because of the choice of putting yourself into that character in the RPG. Like I feel like you imprint a little bit of either yourself or someone or whomever on those characters. So when it's kind of like reading the book and then seeing the movie. I feel like reading the book was playing Earthbound, and then seeing the movie was playing Super Smash Brothers with his voice, and it was like, oh, that's not what I was thinking at all, and it changed it. So like I feel like if they incorporated that, which to me, it would definitely be on the table if they were going to remake it in any way, shape, or form. It would, I feel like, diminish it a little bit. Like, if you think about, like, Super Metroid and then going to, like, the Metroid Prime games for an IP that was dormant for a really long time, like, they kept Samus quiet, right? They kept the mystique about her, which I really appreciated, and they leveled up everything else. So, like, to me, in an Earthbound remake, whatever world that is, I feel like I would want them to keep the characters kind of that like blank slate that we were talking about at the beginning. Like, I don't want them to develop those characters more. I feel like that would be kind of an overstep to at least the fans that play the original.
I think they could get away with that too, again, because like I've only dabbled in Mother 1 just because it's so archaic, you know, but that people didn't really talk then. But Mother 3, it was the same thing where the characters talked a little bit. Like, even your dog had a little, like, conversation. But it was never so much that we're adding a huge personality to these characters. It was
or
still...
a voice, you know, like audible voice, you know. I got the personality from them through the dialogue that I read, but the voice...
It was very much like, this is where you need to go next, or, I mean, without spoilers, there was some very heartfelt things in Mother 3 where, like, it was telling you how Lucas felt, but it wasn't Lucas's words. It was a narrator said, like, Lucas is about to cry, you know. Right. So I felt like that was, like you're saying, a very they still handled it with the integrity of the other games in mind. And I think you're completely right too, where I think they could still do that. I think we still see a lot of games with voiceless characters. They've obviously shown it for the first 3. Like, how do we build this world where the world is the personality and the characters are just seeing it?
Right. I mean, well said. Great way to distill all that. Zelda, even, right? Like, I was just thinking, like, what's a modern game that's been going on for a really long time that hasn't changed? Like, sure, you have like a you know, from Link these days, but I don't hear Link talk. Now, we hear Zelda talk, obviously, in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which is too much. But thank God they didn't give Link a voice. Could you imagine if Link had a voice? Right. This world would burn down.
Well, just wait till we get to our episode on Wind Waker, because I definitely want to express about Link emoting with all of his little faces. But I think this is probably a really good place to wrap up our discussion on Earthbound. Zach,
go play it.
We got to do this.
Yes, me too.
You're officially an RPGaymer member now, so
thank you.
This has been great.
I'd like to make one announcement. I'm sorry. Just trying to interrupt you here. I am retiring
from RPGaymer.
From RPGaymer. You know, I came in on a high and I'm leaving on a high. So it's been great.
I just drop you from the call and close out. This is so epic.
No, but thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these. Go play Earthbound if you haven't.
Yeah, go play. Definitely go play Earthbound, or check out our video on if Earthbound is still worth playing today. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure you like, comment, or subscribe. If you want to be a part of the community, make sure you head on over to our Discord at Hey RPGaymer. We have a great community, and we have discussions going on every day. They are great. We want to thank you all for listening. Now go out there and get gaming.
Bye, guys.
Peace.